Welcome back, friends, to another episode of AE Squared. Recently we had the honor to introduce you to one of our nation's finest that flies the F-35 for the United States Air Force, Justin Hazard-Lee. And as you know, here at Hiller Measurements, we take the F-35 more than just a little bit serious. And so it wouldn't be right to have one of our finest from the Air Force that flies the A version if we didn't bookend it with one of the finest naval aviators I know who flies the C version. And in case you're keeping score at home, yes, we're going to find a Marine that flies the B. But today, we're so excited to introduce you to my friend Alex, who flies and instructs the C model out of Naval Air Station Lemoore. And we're going to get into his head a little bit. We're going to talk about what it's like to put a 35 on a deck and what it means to raise a family while also fly fighting and winning. But first, as is always our case, we want to give you an update on what's going on here at Hiller. So pay attention to this. We'll be right back. At Hiller Measurements, we exist to ensure innovation works. We do this by designing customized electronic functional test systems and instrumentation for the world's most recognized and respected companies and governments. And they choose Hiller for our commitment to deliver quality at speed using Hiller Measurements flow control.
So quality at speed implies that we don't usurp or go around any processes, we expedite processes. We try to do the same things that our customer would do in their own companies, but do so in a way that is quicker, leaner, and with more visibility and transparency.
Our customers want to work with us because, first of all, we're very good at what we do. But maybe more importantly, we try to work with our customers as partners, understanding not only their written requirements, but really what are their overall goals for technical, their business goals, what is driving them. We go well beyond simply reading the letter of requirements and proceeding with the design. We work hand in hand as partners.
We are Hiller Measurements.
We are Hiller Measurements.
We are Hiller Measurements.
We are Hiller Measurements.
And we're back. Thanks for checking out what's going on at Hiller. Now, let me introduce you to Alex Daie. Alex, welcome to the AE Squared stage. It's great to have you.
Jeff, thanks so much. It is an honor to be here with you. Again, I told you earlier, I wish I could be in Austin having this conversation face to face, but I'm grateful to be part of the show.
Well, I'm going to hold you to it because when this strange time called COVID is over, I'm going to take you up on it because one of the things in our new plant that we're opening up is that it would be an honor to have you come and speak to our entire staff, because I can tell you that there is not a person at Hiller that would not – meeting you would be like meeting a rock star to us because we live to support you guys. So you are welcome at Hiller anytime.
I love it. I'm going to take you up on the offer the first time the opportunity arises.
Cool. Well, let's do something else, which is the first time for us. Before we get started in the show, one of the things that we have started as not just a tradition, but as a measure of focus for our staff is to start a tradition that comes from the military from days gone by. And perhaps you've read about it on our website. We've just posted about it, but Hiller Measurements now takes great pride. Our mission, our calling, and what we hold ourselves accountable for is now part of our own challenge coin. And this is a first for us here at Hiller. Every employee has one of these. I carry mine with me every day. It's right in my right pocket every day because it's got our mission and it's got what we stand for on it, and I need to keep that close to me. As our customer's customer, it was an honor for us to send it for the first time to you, Alex, and not just to you, but to your leadership as well. And I want to thank you for two things. Number one is receiving it and hopefully putting it in a place of honor there so that you know that where our hearts are with VFA 125. But also, I want to thank you because you've returned the favor. And so I'm holding in my hand your challenge coin from your squadron, and you have mine.
And I've got yours. Yep.
And I will tell you that in our new plant, as well as here in engineering, we have new display cases coming up, and this from now on will always be on display for our employees and our guests to know in all of our buildings of who we support. So I want to thank you publicly with our friends at AE Squared for helping us basically plagiarize the traditions that you guys have set from millennia on back.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Jeff. Thanks so much for sending your coins over too.
Absolutely.
Again, I think one thing I initially noted and reached out to you about is the article that you wrote about coins and the tradition and everything that it brings to the table. And I love the Hiller Measurements coin there. And as it alludes to, the truth succeeds on its own merit, right? Yeah. And I think that's fantastic that you've created that tradition, and it's hopefully going to be something that's long lasting.
For what it's worth, and this is an important point to make, especially to you, that sentence is not something that we learned from somebody else or we got off of Google. That sentence that's original authorship from us here at Hiller, and we translate directly to the truth succeeds on its own merit. That is a two-edged sword. On the one thing is we always want to be honest in what we're doing, but we're in the business of test and making sure that the folks that we support are delivering products that make sure you come home every time, right? Yeah, and so if absolutely. We don't get truth right, that equates to less than the safety we want to make sure you have. Right. So the truth succeeds on its own merit is our way of holding ourselves accountable to make sure that you come home to your family every day. So thanks for bringing that up.
And again, thank you so much. It'll be, over my time in the military, we collect these coins as you go to different commands, different units.
Yep.
The running joke is you always try and go find the 3 or 4 star and ask for a coin so that you can throw that on the bar as a challenge when you're with your buddy. So anyway, I've got a great collection of coins. This will no doubt be a valuable added.
Outstanding.
Collection. So.
Well, listen, when we do these shows, we always start with the same question, which is we want our audience to know the person a little bit before we talk about the role, the vision, and whatnot. So, Alex, take us back a little bit. You're a U.S. Navy Academy grad, but take us right before that. How did you end up at the Academy? And tell our folks the progression that led you to the C model.
Yeah, so it's probably the funny standard story, but it's amazing. When I was 13, I went to an air show with my grandpa, and I said, wow, that was awesome. I saw the Thunderbirds fly, and at the time, I didn't have any clue what I wanted to do with my life. I was 13, but started reading about flying, got involved in flying, getting a pilot's license, flying 172s and so forth. Ultimately, all the information, I said, right then and there, I said, I want to be a fighter pilot. Mm-hmm. And the reason at the time I said I wanted to be a fighter pilot was like flying Cessnas was great, right? It's phenomenal. I love general aviation. But ultimately I said, I want to fly something that literally defies gravity.
Yeah, go bigger.
I want to be able to point the stick anywhere and fly this epic 3D roller coaster, right? So fortunately, with the support of all my family, and I worked hard in high school, and got accepted and got an appointment to Annapolis, to the Naval Academy. The running joke, as an only child growing up, and I wouldn't say that discipline wasn't a thing in my house, but I was very fortunate to have everything I ever needed and more, right?
Sure.
And I got accepted to Annapolis. My dad said, wow, son, it's going to be a lot of discipline. Good luck, and he meant it in the best way. I showed up on day 1 to Annapolis with curly, really, really long hair, got my head shaved, and off I was into plebe summer as a midshipman at the Naval Academy. It's funny, when you're at Annapolis, they grades, you get a standard GPA with all the academics, but they also grade you on your aptitude or military bearing. And I said, okay, I got to focus, I got to neck down, I got to change my personality, I got to have this discipline. And so we're in the middle of our plebe summer, which is our indoctrination. And we get like midterm counseling, if you will, where they pull you aside and tell you how you're doing. I'm anxious. I'm like, man, I've been trying so hard to be really focused and have that military bearing. And so I meet with my squad leader, and he's like, all right, Alex, I got to tell you, This has obviously been a transition for you. You're doing great, but just some stuff we want you to focus on and work on with the military bearing part. So, for your rankings, you're at the bottom of the platoon." And I said, "Okay, cool. I get it. I got to start somewhere, right?"
Right.
I said, "All right." I responded with, "All right, okay, where at the bottom?" And he was like, "The very bottom." And I was like, "Oh, geez." So anyway, long story short, I had the best time going to the Naval Academy. It provided a lot of fantastic discipline, teaches you about leadership, phenomenal education. Ultimately, my goal hadn't changed. I wanted to be a fighter pilot.
Right.
So was fortunate enough to get a pilot slot out of there and started on the standard flight school track record. So
Right. Pensacola.
Yeah, so you go through Pensacola through API, and then I was fortunate enough, I say, to go to Corpus Christi and fly T-34s back in the day, which was awesome because you get in this aircraft, it's got steam gauges, a broomstick handle, you can pop open the canopy when you're flying. It was the best.
Yeah.
So again, focused hard, worked hard there, and was fortunate enough to pick up a tailhook spot at that point. Which is then I moved to Meridian, Mississippi. And at that point, you start flying the T-45, which is what they're still flying there. Again, worked hard, going through all the phases of flight there, and finally, the weight was lifted off my shoulders the moment they said, "Cool, you have selected the strike route. You are going to fly some variant of the Super Hornet."
Wow.
And again, that was a moment.
So when you're in Mississippi, though, you're already you're flying out under the Wasp or something and getting carrier certified, or have you done carrier certification yet?
You haven't yet. That's the culminating event in what we call advanced flight training, is getting to land on the aircraft carrier in the T-45.
Right.
Only do it during the daytime, but about halfway through that track, they tell you, we've got multiple carrier platforms, right? So we've got F-18, EA-18 Growler, and then E-2C2, so the Hawkeye and the COD that delivers all the stuff onto the carrier. And ultimately, I got to the point where they said, "Hey, you're going to go strike. You're going to fly some variants of the F-18."
Yep.
And I could not have been happier.
Yeah.
Because, all that time, all that work, and you finally get to the point that you've been dreaming of. So
I got to ask a question kind of out of right now. I was just reading an article that I actually was referred to me in some work that we're doing at MIT. And it was a paper about automation bias.
Yeah.
And the paper was talking about, it was a study of pilots that had learned how to fly with steam, and then pilots that had learned to fly with glass cockpits. Right. And the idea being is that as technology gets better, that safety should actually increase. And the ironic thing of this study was it found that the pilots that learned with steam gauges actually were safer pilots than the ones that had learned to fly. That was the key thing, learned to fly with a glass cockpit. Now, these are general aviation pilots, right?
Sure.
You got to go to Corpus and fly steam gauge.
Yeah.
Is there a role for addressing automation bias in Boeing's building this new TX? We're going to have new 5th generation trainers and whatnot, but is there a place for like the Air Force Academy has got a sailplanes rating and whatnot, where it makes all the sense in the world to get the very basics of flying without all the technology before transitioning to something as a Super Hornet or the JSF? Is that a discussion?
I think that's a huge point and absolutely correct. The good news, if you get selected for flight school, they actually they do this flight introduction to get you to a solo and a Cessna, and I think that's exactly why.
Yeah.
And it's usually steam gauges there. I think there is absolutely something to be said about building a scan, having to take a look at multiple instruments at the same time, all the while you're learning stick and rudder skills. The great news about these glass cockpits is that they are so versatile and they present the information to you in a way that is so easy to understand that ultimately, down the road, who knows if that leads to more safe or less safe operations. But I can honestly tell you, I'm thankful I flew the T-34.
Yeah.
Phenomenal airplane. And it drove habit patterns, I think, that were that were paramount to the rest of my time in flight school.
Right.
And like everything's glass these days. I'm in an F-35 cockpit with two
Yeah, it's
ginormous
2 iPads. Yeah.
I loved the steam gauges in the T-34. I thought it was a blast. And I'll tell you, every time you make the transition from from older generation technology to new generation technology, I'm getting to that point where I go back to like when I transitioned to the T-45 and I saw these digital displays. I said, where are my steam gauges?
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
read this. But I think there's something absolutely to be said for stick and rudder mech and basic flying skills while building those habit patterns.
Right. No, I'm with you 100%. So you go to a Super Hornet squadron. Won't get into the fanboy questions, even though I love the fanboy questions. We did the episode with Greg Johnson, our shuttle pilot. It was, I promised not to ask you what did it feel like, so I won't do that to you. But I do want to ask you a question that I posed to Greg as well, because you guys are very, very similar. He flew F-15s. You're flying 18s and F-35s. You want to be able to accelerate going straight up. There you go. That's the F-15 as well. Talk to me about and how you train now, but how you think about and manage stress and indecision so that you can make good decisions in situ, right? Because I think I would imagine that in your business, there's probably very few that would have more of an acute need to recognize, plan for, address, and think through how to handle stress when you only have a few seconds to either correctly or incorrectly manage it.
Right.
So can you walk me through a little bit about how you personally or what your experience is to address that in your own life? But is there also an analog to how you and what you teach a young aviator, or that you might bring with you? All we have to do is turn on the news today, and there's all kinds of out of control stress and worry and fear.
Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, so a lot of ways. Thankfully, my background and going through flight school experience plays a huge role in that, right?
Right.
But ultimately, I would say that in and out of the cockpit, the ability to compartmentalize is huge. And what do I mean is, like you just alluded to, in this day and age, there's so much going on in the world, so much stress based on the current times. But you have to be able to, in a fighter jet, in life, in business, in anything, be able to focus on the specific mission at hand in that moment.
Right.
Right. Ultimately, I would tell you, when you're a flight school student and you think about all of the hurdles you have to overcome, every flight you go on is a test, right? If you take a look at that only from a macro perspective, it's extremely overwhelming, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that translates to anything in life. There's always goals, there's always hurdles, there's always challenges. The good thing that I've been taught and I've learned from experience is the ability to, again, compartmentalize and focus on one part of the mission.
Right.
You can break that down in a cockpit, right? On your normal training sortie, we have what we call an administrative portion of flight, the tactical portion of flight, and we break that down, right? For a new student, that's a lot to handle all at once.
Right.
Their first flight, F-35 is a single seat cockpit. The first time they fly the airplane,
they're solo.
by themselves.
Yeah,
you're solo. So you separate it into individual events, individual moments that you can put 100% of your time and dedication to, so that you have the ability to make those decisions.
Right.
Again, ultimately, that's translated into so many things outside of the cockpit that I have found that I perform better and am able to execute the mission when I give 100% of my effort to one thing at a time.
Right.
Vice ultimately seeing 10 things that I need to do and splitting up task saturation and my ability to execute each of those at the same time. And realize, like in a cockpit, real time, those individual decisions happen almost instantaneously.
Right.
But as you develop the habit patterns, it becomes unbelievably useful and ultimately helps you successfully execute the mission, whatever that is in that specific moment.
Right. So, going back from the old days of the OODA loop and, Hazard and I were talking about this, maybe you picked it up. he was really focused on the power and the value of the debrief.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that really set me back, right? Because in business and so it's all do. And,
Right.
and he had talked significantly about the importance of the debrief. Do you guys, what does that structure of a debrief as you're training a young aviator look like? And how do you see that as an analog for that you would take outside of out of the Navy, as far as, how I could run better debriefs with teams here, how you handle it, your kids in baseball, or, just what is the metaphor that what you're doing in training as far as mission debriefs, where's the lesson in that?
Yeah, I think there's a huge lesson. And again, I'm so fortunate that I've been able to see these lessons learned in aviation translate to other aspects of my life, right?
Right.
As you alluded to, the debrief is huge. There's two things that I stress in a debrief, right? Self-criticism is vital. And I don't mean criticism in a negative way, but ultimately you have to make a self-assessment as to how you performed, the decisions you made, and what you can learn from them, because experience is my favorite way to learn. I joke, I always learn everything the hard way, but the only way I'm going to learn it is if I make that self-assessment and have that debrief,
right?
Inside and outside of the cockpit. So we come back from a flight, we go sit in a room, we have a visual depiction of everything that happened in our aircraft, and we break it down. It's very structured. Again, we break it down between administrative portions of flight, the tactical portions of flight, all the way through the comm calls that were made. But ultimately, it culminates in essentially one sentence. So we spend all this time, providing constructive criticism so that we can do better. At the beginning of that flight, as we briefed it, the first thing we said was, hey, our mission objective is to do this.
Right.
The very last thing that we do in the debrief, the very last thing is one sentence. And we say, hey, today our mission objective was to execute this. Did we succeed or did we fail?
Right.
And at that point, you walk away and you take everything that you just learned and apply it in the future. So, in a business construct, I think that still applies, right?
Yeah, right.
You don't necessarily need to nitpick every single decision that's made. You don't have time to do that. We also don't have time to do that.
Right.
But the self-evaluation, if you go into a decision with an objective, what do I want the outcome of that objective to be? And after the decisions are made and the outcome is known, you assess that and say, hey, was I successful in that or was I not? And if you weren't, ultimately, what can you take away from that so that the next time that decision comes up or something like that, you have one more tool in your pocket to guide you on that decision?
Is that a hard thing to teach? I would imagine as an instructor pilot to observe the level of self-awareness of the student as he's going through that process in front of you could be very insightful and also very frustrating.
Absolutely. I will tell you the one thing I love about my job is that we teach different levels of experience on a daily basis, different personalities.
Yeah.
So it's really honed my leadership and ability to assess how another person learns and what they're taking in, and how do I adjust my construct as an instructor to get the point across to them. I'll tell you also, one of the hardest things to do as an F-35 instructor pilot in an aircraft where there's only one seat is I will go out as a section with a student, and ultimately I'm trying to assess what he's doing in his airplane while I'm flying my own airplane, and take notes so that I can come back to the debrief and say, hey, here's what I saw you doing at this time, and this is what I want you to think about for next time. So it's challenging. It's a ton of fun. It helps you, again, integrate, communicate, and focus on outcomes. And I will tell you, one of the most rewarding things that I see on a daily basis is I'll fly with a student, and I will tell you, I joke that I'm a very blue-collar fighter pilot, right? I've struggled along the way. I learn all my lessons the hard way, and you'll see there are students that maybe struggle with some concept a little bit more at first, but nothing is more rewarding than you see them go execute the next mission and the light bulb clicks, and you tell yourself, awesome, I got through. They heard it, and they're succeeding. Fantastic.
It's funny you bring that up, that you're a blue collar, because Have you ever heard the analogy of Michael Jordan versus Steve Kerr?
I don't think so.
So, Michael Jordan's world's greatest basketball player, right?
Yeah.
A lot of things worked really hard. A lot of things came natural. One of the worst NBA coaches of all time.
Yeah, sure. Right.
Right. Steve Kerr, role player, worked hard and had to think through every aspect. That's the blue collar, right?
That's the blue collar. Yeah.
Right. Will go down as one of the best coaches of all time.
Best coaches of all time.
Yeah. As you refer to yourself as the blue collar, I'm talking to Steve Kerr.
Yeah. There you go.
Is what I'm.
Absolutely.
And
it's come with a lot of experience and a lot of learning, but it's great. Yeah.
So, when we first put together the title of our show, Artists, Engineers, and Entrepreneurs, it was really targeted at trying to bring out those three tools out of leaders who are known for one, but they actually have all of them. I want to walk down that list with you for a second, because I think there's a lot of misnomers or assumptions that are made about people in your profession that may or may not be valid. So I want to test some of them. So,
sure.
Artistry. You fly one of the most technically advanced, awesome pieces of equipment ever. One would suspect that is a highly structured environment. And you teach that environment. Where is there the room for the artistry? Where is the room for your fingerprint, for that other aviators would observe you at work or your peers at work and say, there's practitioners and then there's artists. Where's that? What does that look like in your profession?
Absolutely. I'm thankful to say there's a lot of room for bringing out the inner artist as a fighter pilot. And it's a lot of fun. And that's how you ultimately, as an instructor, find ways to connect with students that you're instructing.
Right.
I'll tell you, as they come through different phases of training, it's very structured, right? It's lectures followed by simulator events, followed by flights, and we progress them all the way through. Eventually, you can see the students, they're so smart. Some of them want to know the answer to every situation that you could put them in, right? Every single situation. And my favorite response to some of these what if scenarios that I get is, hey guys, this is where flying a fighter jet becomes an art, not a science.
Right.
And it's because there is no single answer to every situation we could be put in.
Right.
We have an 80% solution when we get into the cockpit and strap on the aircraft and go fly.
Right.
But there's that 20% on every single flight, regardless of what mission you're doing, that you ultimately can't plan for.
Right.
You have no idea how it's going to play out. You brief to success, you plan for it. But I would tell you that, I've been flying as a Navy pilot for 9 years now. I don't even think I can count on one hand how many times the flight has gone perfectly according to plan.
Right.
That's how, as an instructor, I get to bring in the art of being a fighter pilot.
Yeah.
And I tell them, I said, hey guys, here are things to think about, right? Here's how I want you to build your situational awareness to the scenario and ultimately make a decision that you think is the best one. There's no answer.
Right.
And I tell them, you could do this, you could do X, you could do Y, and they'll all play out differently. None of them are wrong answers. And ultimately, you see them also develop and start to make these decisions on your own or on their own without looking for the book answer, and it's extremely gratifying.
I bet. I would imagine it's also unsettling for the young aviator to come in and be invited into a sandbox from which they get to build their own sandcastle.
Oh, extremely. You look at sometimes wide-eyed and they're like, what? But, that's what we're there for. And again, I was in their shoes too. So
sure.
The news is I keep both pictures in my head, and I try to remember, like, what was I thinking when I was that junior and I was coming up and through the training program, and how can we convey to them that, guys, there's not always an answer.
Right.
That's why we're naval aviators.
Yeah.
Because we have the ability to exercise sound judgment.
Yeah.
And come up with our own answer there. And it's great. I'll tell you, the other thing that I've loved about being a naval aviator is that at the end of the day, I'm a fighter pilot, and I
Roger
will
that.
argue that that's the world's greatest job. But the one thing the Navy does that is amazing is they give us leadership positions that also allow us to develop our own leadership style, to integrate with the sailors and Marines that are working on these jets day in and day out. And that's been a lot of fun. I showed up to my fleet squadron and they said, "Hey, welcome. You barely know how to fly the Super Hornet. Go work on all these qualifications. But oh, by the way, you are a division officer and you are now in charge of 20 to 30 sailors. In theory, you are their leader, and they are the experts on loading ordnance on the airplane." And my response was,
I don't know how to load ordnance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have no idea how to do that. So,
Yeah.
again, they throw you in these situations that are fantastic for not only personal but professional development,
Right.
and really bringing in that ability to paint your own picture, if you will.
So when you did that,
Your mark.
because I'm curious, our next episode is actually with a CEO who does turnarounds, and I'm sure he's going to have something to say about this. But what is that? What's the lesson in that for you? To be placed in a position of leadership where you don't have the domain knowledge of the people you are leading. How do you lead effectively? Because I can tell you, most cases, you need to become a PhD before you start to lead the person with a bachelor's degree. And what you're saying is that's not true.
Yeah, I don't think it's true. And I'm very thankful that my experience has shown me otherwise.
Right.
But I will tell you that, like, the immediate word that comes to mind is humility.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So, again, the funny thing is it took me 4 years to be complete with flight school, to show up to an operational Super Hornet squadron. And during those 4 years, my job was to only worry about myself and become the best naval aviator that I could possibly be.
Right.
And then I show up to a fleet squadron and they say, "Hey, you did a good job. You need to do better. So keep working hard.
Yep.
And oh, by the way, you are now responsible for leading this division that is within an operational fleet squadron." So you walk in there and again, humility.
Yeah.
I have learned that people are your greatest asset.
Right.
And I firmly believe that, and I've seen it firsthand. And you go in there, and humility means you walk in there and say, "Hey guys, I am your leader. Ultimately, you are the experts, right? You just alluded to it. I don't have a PhD. I just spent 4 years becoming a naval aviator, and now I'm a division officer. And I am here for you. Here's our mission. Here's what we need to execute, and find ways for me to enable you to do that."
Right.
Ultimately, and it's again, it's humbling, to say the least, to be able to do that. And I've again, like I said, I love being a fighter pilot, but some of my best moments as a naval officer have involved interactions with sailors and being able to lead and see their growth.
Yeah. It's funny, if we jump to the other side of our title, which is the entrepreneur part, as you're talking about that, it brings me back, and my producer Anthony was there, back when we did the episode with Daniel Johnson. One of the people that came for that episode, back when we could shoot in front of a live audience, was one of his investors, and that was a principal with a group called Moonshots. Moonshots only invests in companies that are led by people who are former military. And as I listen to you speak about the experience that you had, I can understand the wisdom in what Moonshots Capital does.
Right.
Because it seems that experience is probably far more valuable in the execution of business than an MBA might be.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. An MBA is a fantastic tool, right?
Right.
Absolutely a lot to learn. But in essence, the MBA provides you the book smarts.
Right.
To go and execute as a CEO in business wherever you want. But ultimately, I would argue to create a successful institution, whether that be a unit, i.e. a squadron in the Navy, or a startup, or being the president of Hiller Measurements, at some point you are going to have to enable the people that work for that unit or that entity or that corporation. You're going to have to build a community that is founded upon trust. And, ultimately as the leader, it's your job to define the mission and define the vision of the company so that they can go execute.
Right.
Because as a single person, as one guy, I don't have the ability to do all that.
Right.
I've learned that, right? I can't do that. I will tell you one of the most humbling experiences of my life is launching off of an aircraft carrier on a combat mission.
Mm-hmm.
And why is that humbling? For a couple reasons. Obviously, the years I dedicated to training and trying to hone and perfect my skills to do that.
Right.
But that's not actually what's most humbling about it. I have the benefits of, being at the tip of the spear in the sense that I get to personally see the results of all of the effort that goes into making this happen. Mm-hmm. In a fully loaded aircraft carrier on deployment, you got upwards of 5,000 people, 70 aircraft. And I'm not kidding when I say that you cannot execute the mission without every single person.
Everyone on there. Yeah.
Everyone on there. It's not possible. There are so many moving pieces. There are so many puzzle pieces to put together. And if one of those becomes a problem, you just lost the mission.
Yeah, and where do you draw that line, right? Because that's the 5,000 people on the carrier. Then there's the carrier group.
Yeah.
And some of that group you can't see above water, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. You nailed it. So again, ultimately, I think the leadership that I have been able to experience, the roles that I've been put in, the uncomfortable situations of leadership that I've been put in, as you alluded to with moonshots, is, again, I think very applicable in the business world.
Yeah, it's funny because, you think about the critical problem-solving skills that you have to face as being an active, duty officer in any capacity. That's a heck of a fertile ground for a future in business after your career if you choose.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Because
I have
at the root of running a business or identifying a business to be created is a problem to solve or a need to be met.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's what you're trained to do from the time you enter the Naval Academy all the way up.
Without a doubt. As you alluded to in the world of business that we're living in today, technology is moving so fast at a pace that we literally have never seen. It's unmatched. There's digital transformations taking place everywhere, right? And again, the military does a fantastic job of defining a mission,
right,
and ultimately giving you the leadership opportunities to go execute at all levels of leadership, right? And again, one of the greatest experiences I've had as a leader is seeing the junior sailors and Marines finally understand that. Right? We have, again, I'll never forget, I'm on the flight deck of an aircraft carrier in the Gulf. It's 150-degree heat index because it's the middle of the summer. And you've got, 20 to 22-year-old sailors and Marines working day in and day out to make these combat missions happen. It's very easy for them to lose sight of the big picture. Right. But ultimately, when you can convey to them that, hey, you are as big a piece of this as I am, and you have just as much of a role
skin
as I do.
Skin in the game right here, yeah.
And you see them finally understand that. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So I think there is a huge amount of learning and application of military leadership to the business world.
Agreed. I without a doubt, with all of the craziness that's going on outside and inside of our country, the men and women in uniform are still an example of what we could be.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Every single day.
So now let's get into the engineer part, because now this one's starting to hit close to home for us at Hiller, right?
Yeah.
As you go out to fly a sortie, how much thought do you give to the maintenance personnel that prep that plane, the people that design the LRUs that are on that plane, or the validity of the design that was considered 15 years ago when that plane was still paper? Do those thoughts go through your head? Or is it you're pretty much task focused on the mission and that you need to just stay myopically focused there?
I'll tell you, as you are executing the mission, as you are airborne on that tactical sortie, where that actual mission is going to take no more than 20 to 30 minutes,
Yeah.
your bandwidth is fully dedicated to optimizing the F-35 as a weapon system and a platform. But I will caveat that with I am very fortunate in that, again, some of the collateral responsibilities I've had as an F-35 instructor have placed me in roles where I get to frequently interact with the engineers that that built this program from the ground up.
Right.
It's been another humbling experience because ultimately I get to go fly the airplane and see how incredible it is. I joke, again, I go back to being blue collar. I'm an economics major by trade.
Yeah.
Right. So, I am in no way, shape, or form an engineer, and I laugh that the engineers think on a completely different bandwidth than I do. But I have loved integrating with them, communicating with them, because in the background of going to fly this tactical mission, there are thousands of people.
Right.
No kidding, thousands of people dedicating their lives to making this the most capable platform or fighter jet the world has ever seen.
Right.
And again, I'm so blessed and thankful that I get to see the outcome of that as a fighter pilot. I'll tell you, it's also been fun integrating and talking with the engineers because you get to see a different perspective.
Yeah.
To the ultimate thing that is the F-35, and I also get to provide them my perspective. So. In aviation, we have this term that is situational awareness, right? And there's varying definitions out there, but ultimately you can define situational awareness as the degree with which an individual's perception matches reality.
Right.
Okay. So, I take off, I go fly in my F-35, I'm in a single seat fighter jet. In essence, in that aircraft at that specific moment in time, there is only one perception of reality.
Right.
And that is mine.
Yep.
And you hope ultimately
that it's accurately reflecting the world around you.
Right. That
this goes back to Boyd's OODA loop way back when the whole observe, orient, and make sure it's accurate. Right.
So the same still applies. The situational awareness. Like my ultimate goal is to be what we call high SA, i.e. my perception accurately matches reality. Something that has been another fantastic experience for me is integrating with these engineers. I get on these conference calls and we talk about, hey, how can we make this better? Yeah. And what I've seen is at that point, you're bringing in the engineers. Think about how many degrees of separation there are between an engineer working on a part or a piece of the F-35 puzzle and the pilot.
Yeah.
In some instances, there are 10, 20 degrees of separation.
Right.
From engineer, from design, all the way out to full integration in the cockpit. And one of my favorite things to do is enhance the situational awareness between the pilots and the engineers, i.e., I'm on a conference call with engineers and I can say, hey guys, I have a fundamental understanding of the reality for a pilot, right?
Yeah.
I get to see that every day. I get to live that.
Right.
So my situational awareness from a pilot's perspective, I can provide that to them. And what I've noticed is, which has also been so humbling, is that literally people have dedicated careers as engineers to making this platform what it is today.
Yeah.
I wish I could take every single one of them flying.
Sure.
And show them how incredible this aircraft is. But one thing I've been able to do is to create a synergy between engineers and between pilots and say, hey guys, we recognize this as a problem.
Yeah.
The engineers recognize it as a problem. The pilots recognize it as a problem. But your situational awareness as an engineer, i.e. your perception of reality as an engineer, looking at the, all the science behind how to make this work, is very different from my situational as a pilot to the practical application of this engineering miracle that is an F-35.
Right.
And so when you're able to communicate effectively between those two perceptions, what I've found is that you create a phenomenal synergy between the two, and you're able to define the pain point to really harness that and ultimately solve the problems.
Agree on what we're optimizing.
And not only solve the problems, but just optimize it, make it better, and create the most advanced platform that we have seen.
Any inspirations for the next great business that comes out of that for you?
Oh my goodness, I've got my own secrets.
Don't we all?
But I'll tell you, I've really enjoyed watching the kind of transition I've seen in the DoD acquisition realm and industry. You talked about Dan Robinson and all the great things they're doing at Red 6, and they've been able to, I think, take advantage with their phenomenal tech, the construct that is taking place within DoD, i.e. we've got AFWorks now. It's kind of an Air Force innovation hub. The Navy is trying with Naval X is a new development they've got to act as a super connector for technology, because again, the technology is coming so fast and it's so agile that we've got to find ways to get it to our warfighter faster. And I think the DoD is doing a phenomenal job.
I couldn't agree with you more. I am a big fan of what Ellen Lord and some of the folks at DoD underneath her are doing in that regard. So good to hear that it's recognized at the pointy end of the spear as well. That's
absolutely. I love seeing it. And again, I think they're trying to listen to the warfighter, right, and find ways to implement. And as I kind of alluded to, finding the synergy and being able to really define the solution for the end user, i.e. the ultimate customer, is what's going to make a business successful. And I think that's why, you look at Red 6 and some of the tech they've got. I think that's going to drive those guys to success, because ultimately they have the perspective, the situational awareness as to what it's like to be in the cockpit of an aircraft, and define that pain point and provide the solution.
Dan is very clear when you get to know him on what Red 6's why is. Why do they exist? And he's very, you're talking about being able to really focus on the one thing. Dan is focused on one thing. Right? You don't see them off there trying to expand into gaming and all that stuff, even though that's where that technology came from. Dan's very clear on what the problem he's going to solve, and he knows that it's not just because there's a market. It is something that is noble, honorable, and serves other people. And that is something to be duplicated. Speaking of things that are worth duplicating, I'm going to have Anthony bring this up in post-production, but you sent me a picture yesterday that just, to be honest with you, I was totally gobsmacked by this picture, and we're showing this to our viewers now, and we're going to use this as the front page of your episode. But the dichotomy of being a fighter and a father.
Yeah.
This is the last question I wanted to get to. So, talk to me about leaving home in the morning and coming home at night. I have to imagine the girls in your life are so proud of their daddy. But what is that? How does that, being a father, a husband, and then you're going to go out there and put your rear end in a dangerous field every day?
Yeah.
What does that require of you? And what does that require of your wife?
My goodness, I'll tell you, my wife is my best friend and my biggest support.
Sure.
So, you can make arguments that what I do, fighter aviation is a dangerous occupation. And sure it is. But ultimately, goodness, I have the incredible support of my entire family.
Yeah.
And that's what allows me to do it. And I go back to compartmentalization, right? So I leave home in the morning. I kiss the girls goodbye. I say, I can't wait to see you when I get home. And I go strap on that $100 million fighter jet that is a ton of fun to fly. And ultimately, I have a responsibility to my family that I cherish every day. That is to be a husband and to be a father. And I couldn't do that effectively if I wasn't able to compartmentalize.
Yeah, absolutely.
Meaning that I go back to that. When I strap on that aircraft, I'm going to go execute this mission mode.
Yep.
And that was, a huge discussion and point before I went on deployment, and it's known, right? So it's known that it's going to be dangerous, but it's known that every day when I go fly, I am doing everything I can to hone my skills, be the most lethal and safest pilot that I can be. And there's nothing better than having the support of your family to go do that.
I couldn't agree with you more. Couldn't agree with you more. Alex, it has been such a pleasure to talk to you. And I got to tell you, I really hope our viewers just share the heck out of this episode, because in the midst of all of the weirdness that's going on in our world right now, what the men and women of armed forces and what you guys are doing in the Navy are a reason for all of us to be proud to be Americans. And I don't mean that in a cliche way. And this time, I mean that in a very real and sincere way. And so I just, on behalf of our team here at Hiller, it is an honor to support you guys. And if there is anything that we can do to do a better job at that, we will be full of humility with open ears. Please let us know what we can do to better support you.
Oh, absolutely, Jeff. Hey, it's been an honor to be on the show. I've had a blast. I'm not kidding. I can't wait to come out to Austin and see you guys hang out.
Let me tell you, I got barbecue with your name written on it. And as soon as we can do it without a mask on, that's great. I do have to say one thing, though. It is disappointing that there is no like an F-16B model with 2 seats, because the other good thing about Dan is, and he knows this, when we can get out of this, we're going to shoot a sequel, and I'm going up in that Bearcoot with him. I wish I could do that with you guys, but I can't do that. That's a bummer.
I wish, right? Again, I take everybody flying this thing. It's so much fun.
Well, I've been to the 35 Experience Center in D.C. a number of times, so I'll settle for the simulator.
There you go. Well, hey, thanks again, Jeff. It's been a blast.
Alex, thank you for everything you're doing for our country. Go fly, fight, and win. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. AE Squared is a Hiller Measurements Town Hall production. Copyright 2020. AE Squared is produced by Anthony Longoria. Production support by Crystian Zamora. The email address, if you'd like to attend a future taping, is tickets@hillermej.com. Leading a company is never easy, even in the best of times. But imagine taking over a company that's nearly bankrupt. What would you do to turn it around? Eric Kish has done it 12 times across 5 industries and 3 continents. His first exit was valued in the billions, and his latest, Nanoramic Laboratories, is on the rise. This week on Artists, Engineers, and Entrepreneurs, we talk about the strategy to successfully turn around a company in stress. You won't want to miss this episode. Eric Kish, this week on AE Squared, from your friends at Hiller Measurements.